I started in the late 90s and sort of haphazardly started a company. So we basically, my brother and I, kind of fell into this performance-based marketing business where we were working with direct response clients, companies like Columbia House Records and Doubleday Book Club, and we were helping them acquire customers on a performance basis. And back then, we were creating their landing pages, hosting their landing pages, collecting their customer information. I mean, think about a list of things you couldn't do today. Building the ads themselves, running the ads, buying their media, and it was through that process and through that company that I ended up eventually getting connected to, I will say that the future Mediaocean, which was that I met a salesperson at the time, Mike Walrath, who was at DoubleClick, where Bill Wise also was as well. I didn't meet Bill initially. And I started buying media. We started buying media through DoubleClick. Mike became one of the top salespeople at DoubleClick. And when he left the company after DoubleClick went through some changes in terms of selling off pieces of the business, Google buying eventually the technology piece later on, but initially sort of flipping into another ad network style company at the time, Mike left and called me and said, and my brother, and said, do you want to invest in this new company that I'm starting? It's going to be a platform to trade digital advertising, hopefully in a more efficient way than has happened to date. And we had been doing digital advertising up until that point by signing physical insertion orders and faxing them as an example. And so going from that to a concept of efficient trading, keeping creative in one centralized place, and eventually the idea of programmatic was started. So we said, this sounds interesting and exciting. This is someone we want to partner with. And so my brother and I wrote a check to this guy, Mike Walrath, joined his board, became his first set of investors, and this company, Right Media, was born. And through Right Media was how eventually I think a lot of the rest of the history of my career was really formed, and certainly through DoubleClick was how I met Ramsey and Bill Wise. And so there's, I guess, relationships that go back to almost the 25 years that I've been in the space. In 2009 and going into 2010, when we started Moat, we were asking, how are brands going to figure out digital, and what's holding them back? Why, when Pepsi does advertising in digital, why do they do direct response style advertising? So back then they would buy, display ads advertising a sweepstakes, and they wouldn't tell a story about, sort of the feeling you get when you open a Pepsi or that sort of thing. And so we thought the challenge is creative. The challenge is the mechanism that the story is being told through. And so our initial idea for Moat was, let's build a crowdsourced creative marketplace. Ideas can come from anywhere. Let's leverage the power of the internet to bring interesting and new ideas to the forefront in order to build creative and in order to help brands tell stories. And what ended up happening from that was we got into conversations with brands where they said, we don't know how to measure success on the ads that we're running. And so we would say, well, how do you measure that today? And they would say, well, we would look at whether someone clicks on one of our ads. And even back then, the number of people that responded to an ad by clicking on it was low. But if you're talking about brand advertising, where the idea is to kind of keep a story in your head about how great IBM is or how great whoever is, the idea of responding to that by immediately clicking on it didn't really make much sense. And I think the number back then was like 1 in 10,000 people clicked on ads. And so it didn't sort of follow that should be the right set of metrics for branding. And so we started asking questions. Well, if you were to have a different set of metrics, what would it be? And conceptually, what does measurement need to look like? And early on in the Moat cycle, we started talking about this idea of attention, and the idea of, well, in order to ultimately be impacted by something, in order to be top of mind, in order for you to go, yeah, that's the brand I know, that's who I want to buy as a consumer or work with on the business side, it had to kind of stick in your head. And so we started thinking through what is the what is the right way to measure that? And this idea of attention kind of became front and center. The challenge, and many years later, we're still talking about attention as an industry, but the challenge back then was there was something even more basic than attention. So when we went into brands and we said, okay, we want to measure whether your ad drove attention, the conversation ended up becoming about what became viewability. Well, how do we, as a starting place, how do we even know the ad was on the screen? Because if I go to a page and I don't scroll down all the way, I never see the ad. Am I still paying for that? And back then, the answer was yes. If you scroll down on a page, you pay for it based on how many times the ad loaded, and we borrowed this collectively from the magazine world. That led us to this strange phenomenon where essentially we're buying ads as an industry that were never on the screen. And what we thought was going to be cool, let's deal with viewability. This is, a 3-month project, 6-month project, ended up taking 7 years of debating, well, is it half the pixels of the ad on the screen, or 100% of the ad, or 70%, or should it be 1 second to count, or 2 seconds, or 1.5, so on and so forth. And so we as an industry went off of a side path about viewability. But for me, for Moat, this was always about understanding success of advertising, and particularly on the brand side of the house. And so Moat, over time changed. It became a measurement company entirely. We would eventually sell the company to Oracle in 2017, and I went to work for Oracle for a couple of years before leaving just before the pandemic. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of great entrepreneurs and a lot of people that are driven to build companies. And I think it's one of those things that if you build companies, or if you built a company, you tend to meet people that are doing something similar. And I sort of put myself out there, starting right after Right Media. Right Media was, I guess, our first investment. But starting after that, we started essentially saying, hey, we'd be open to investing in companies if there's something interesting where we can be helpful. And so fast forward, we've invested in more than 100 companies, I guess, and not just in the advertising space, but a wide swath of industries. So Yext, which is a public company in the software space, Diamond Foundry, which makes lab-grown diamonds, so couldn't be any more different. Data Miner, which does sentiment analysis and sort of signal analysis out of social platforms, as well as a variety of the biggest venture funds out there. And through those funds, we've been able to be investors in companies like SpaceX as well. And so we've seen an incredible variety of ideas and grit and passion. And I do think that there is, people that build companies do not come in the same shape or size. They're all different. There is no, formula that works every time. What I will say is there are some common themes that cut through all of the investments that we've made, and certainly every company that we've been successful with is a team driven approach. It always goes back to the core of the people. I can't think of one example where it was just some amazing technology and that changed, the whole thing. It was always the people who were driving that technology, and people who have a mentality of being forever optimistic, forever hopeful, who recognize that, building a startup is a roller coaster. There's a lot of ups and downs. I used to tell people, you never get too excited when something good happens, because something bad's going to happen around the corner. And if something bad happens, you try not to get too down on yourself, because something good will happen soon. And that's kind of the life of a startup. But I've been fortunate, frankly, not only to invest in great companies, and not everyone has worked, but I've learned a lot from all of them, including the ones that have not worked. But it's been a learning experience for me. So getting to talk to other people who are building companies, getting to ask questions, how have you dealt with this kind of situation? How have you, thought through raising capital in this kind of environment, in a great environment, in a not great environment? How have you managed cash flow in different industries, et cetera? All of those types of things have been really great learning for me. And I think at some level, I incorporate all of that into the companies that we build. $600 billion is the estimate spent on digital out of a $850-ish billion total advertising market. So we are roughly 68, 70% digital at this point. And so 20 billion is going to basically understand what worked and what didn't. What smarter decisions should we make? The interesting thing about measurement is all measurement actually answers the same set of questions. All measurement answers the question of, was your advertising successful? Did it achieve the goals that you set out to achieve? Did it drive some sort of positive outcome? What was the quality of the interactions, of the stories that you distributed? What was the quality of those exposures? And so what we decided to do at Mobian was to build a marketplace for measurement and data. And the vision of Mobian is to democratize measurement in order to drive outcomes. And so we believe that increasingly, with so much money being spent on digital platforms, and continually, I think we're going to stop calling it digital versus traditional. I think we're going to get to a place where these two worlds sort of just merge or blur, and maybe we're there already. But a heck of a lot of money is being spent across a wide array of formats and channels. And so back in the day, if you will, if I said you ran a 15-second ad, you'd have a pretty good idea of what I meant by that. You could sort of picture it. You'd imagine probably it was on a TV. It didn't really matter whether it was on CBS or NBC or ABC or whoever. It would kind of look and feel the same, and you could kind of understand the consumer experience of that ad similarly. If today I said you ran a 15-second ad, even if I said it was on 100% of the screen, even if I said it was to a human being, confirmed by protected media that it was delivered to a human, it was viewable, it was safe, all of those things, you would still have no idea if I was talking about TikTok or CTV in that example. And the challenge in digital is that all impressions are not created equal. It's not that one is necessarily better or worse, but they're just different. And because of that inconsistency of format, of consumer experience, of where, how, when we consume content and the ads that go with them, measurement is quite complex. And so it's led us down this very kind of challenging path where there are 200 companies trying to ask and answer questions in these worlds. That's why you have companies like EDO trying to understand, are search queries resulting from video ads being shown, and you have companies who are trying to understand TikTok exposures on the other hand, and those are two very different worlds. You have companies like you mentioned, Dumbstruck, trying to understand emotion of video, and you have companies like Attain, a company I'm on the board of, who are building consumer panels to understand purchase behavior across retailers. It all fits under this lens or this sort of umbrella of measurement, but the challenge is, how do all of those pieces work together for fun? And I actually think it's important to try to optimize for happiness. One of the things that I try to do is make little changes to my habits. I believe in this concept of so-called micro habits, and I think that you can make little changes and that over time they add up to be big differences. And I've personally been able to do that when there's things in my life that I wanted to change, how physically fit I am, or how, whatever, things like that. I found that making small micro changes add up to be a lot over time. And so I think about how do you sort of drive things that make you happy? How do you create more happiness in your life? How do you reduce stress? I believe that stress can be good. It can be a driver, can motivate you, but I think it can also be a real problem in terms of longevity. And so I think trying to get a balance is critical. Being a co-owner of the Surf Lodge family of brands, which includes the Surf Lodge in Montauk, the Snow Lodge in Aspen. If you want to come visit us at the St. Regis Hotel this winter in Aspen. Super fun, exciting, sort of the cross section of music, art, food, life, culture, all those things kind of coming together. I used to think of those things as different from our business world, and now I actually think of them as exactly the same thing, because I think that those things cut through everything that we do in life, and that means in business as well as in our personal life. And so yeah, do things to make you happy.